today we have a special guest, John Ventre, UFO researcher from MUFON and former UFO researcher from MUFON and lieutenant governor in the running for Pennsylvania. So yeah, but I found John just doing research. I found MUFON. I just typed in like Pennsylvania researchers or Pennsylvania UFO research, and MUFON came up, and then his name was in one of the YouTube videos that they had posted for one of the like a seminar or something. So I clicked on it, and his name came up. Let me just shoot my shot like Kobe. You know what I mean? That shit went in.
I'm retired from UPS. I was an executive there for 26 of my 35 years. But I got into the UFO field. I was on the board of MUFON for 3 years. I was a multi-state director for 11 years, based out of Pennsylvania. I did 33 TV episodes, a 45-minute interview on Anderson Cooper, and I also spend as much time in the UFO field as I do in the political field, which hasn't gone as well. And I published
Now, are you
14
from
books.
Pennsylvania?
No, I'm not from Pennsylvania. I grew up in New York. I lived in Oklahoma for a couple of years, worked in Europe for a little bit, New Jersey for 6, 7 years, but I've been in PA for 29 years now.
Oh wow. Yeah, so let's get right into it. So we'll start with the UFO stuff, and then we'll get into your political career. So what made you dive into the UFO field as being researcher?
Yeah, well, I think I started a lot differently than anyone else, at least in doing, maybe 200 of these podcasts. Uh, I wrote a book on end time prophecy based around the Mayan calendar in 2012, but started writing it in 95 and 96. But while researching, I kept coming across, I was looking at different cultures' end time prophecies. I kept coming across them talking about getting knowledge from sky people, star people, people on flying shields. So I said when I published that book, it was a novel, a really good action novel. Um, I said I'm going to go look at the UFO field. So in 1998, I joined MUFON. I didn't know anything about UFOs. I was 41 years old. I didn't know anything about the
Hmm.
UFO field, the history, nothing. So I joined them in '98. They kind of, it's kind of funny where I got some cases, and then like they forgot about me for a couple of years. It was a state director. He just wasn't doing his job. I actually forgot I was a MUFON member, other than I was getting the journal. So I finally reached out to them. I said, I haven't received a case in years. So James Carrion was the new international director. And he said to me, "You want to be a state section director?" He gave me like 3, 4 counties right here. And I said, okay. So now I got back into doing cases. And still, the guy we had for state director was, he was terrible. And I again complained to him that, it's like I'm not getting the cases, I'm not getting answers, I'm not getting information. There's no meetings, there's no nothing going on. So about a week later, he contacted me and he said, I looked at your resume. You're a multi-state security, public affairs, crisis management director with UPS. You want to be a multi-state director with MUFON? I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I
Hmm.
immediately, like, boom, became the state director. And they gave me, I think it was West Virginia with it. And then they gave me Delaware. And at work at UPS, I had Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Virginia. And then they gave me, like 7 states. So I got into it. And then I started my research, because you got to be a subject matter expert. If you're going to be a state director, you got to know what you're talking about. So I really delved into the history. I must have
Right.
read 100 books. And, a lot of people consider me, I wrote a book, The Case for UFOs, which I told Jan Harzan, this should be required reading. Not that I want to make the money off of selling them. I would have sold them at $1 over my cost to MUFON. But it was, I really put the whole history of ufology together, and then I did a case book about Pennsylvania UFOs. But there was a lot of people who consider me, a top 10 in the world on the history, and kind of on the same par as Stanton Friedman and Richard Dolan and a few others. So that's a big compliment.
So now I did listen to some podcasts you had in the past speaking on this topic and speaking on your experiences. When did it become more of a personal thing for you?
Yeah, once I got into this field, I started having all kinds of paranormal activity. So it became personal. So let me think. When was the first major? I would say the first major thing was maybe in 2004. That was right before I became a state director. But the most it became personal when I got involved in this, and they showed up. So I've had unbelievable amount of paranormal activity. Matter of fact, I just had it this week, and I text my kids. I'm working on this TV series out of Canada, and I just got the green light. We're going to do 24 episodes. I'm one of the main co-hosts on it. That's good, 24 episodes. So I started doing my research last year. It's not necessarily on UFOs, it's UFO related. I don't want to tell you the topic, but I started doing my research. So it's August 13th of 25. I'm in my rec room watching a baseball game, because you can read and watch baseball at the same time. That's how boring baseball is. But so I'm doing my research, and the research really, see, a lot of my stuff now at this point, because of the activity that showed up, I've taken, I don't want to say a religious view, but I've taken a real, that the UFO contact is malevolent. These are malevolent interdimensional entities, MIEs. I coined that. Um, so I'm doing my research, and when I do my part on the TV series, I'm gonna add this malevolent side of the UFO field, which relates to the TV series, although it's not a UFO show. Uh, so I'm in there doing my reading, doing my research. All of a sudden, the lights turn off. So right away, I said, "Oh, I blew a fuse." But then I look, well, the TV's still on, right? I get up, I turn the switches back on. They work. I went down, checked the fuse box. There was nothing out, but obviously I already turned the lights on, so I know it's nothing out. So then, it's probably close to 10 o'clock. I go to bed. I go to brush my teeth. I turn the light on in the bathroom. Go to brush my teeth. About 100 black flies start coming out from behind my mirror. Now, the black fly thing is a marker of the demonic. So I run downstairs, I get a can of Raid, and I spray the top, I spray the bottom. I'm swatting at flies, killing them. I got like 100 dead flies on the counter there of my sink, and I take a picture of it. So now I get the okay, we're going to do the show. It's a year later. So on the exact same day, August 13th, I got the first episode, all the questions to answer, 31 questions, and I'm putting it all together because I really want to be precise and say some good stuff. I spent a couple of hours on it, so I'm done. Right? So it's the same exact date as a year ago, August 13th, about the same time. I go to bed, I go to brush my teeth, I turn the light on in the bathroom, all the flies come out again. So I got the picture. I go and grab Raid and I spray the top and the bottom. I send it to my kids with the pictures, and right away. Now they've experienced paranormal activity too, and here, and right away they said, "Well, we get gnats that come out every summer." And I said, "Wait a second, this is on the same day a year apart, at the same time, while I'm doing the same research on the same topic, which could be demonically related. It will be, at least in my presentation, once you understand the topic of the TV series, which I won't tell you. That I said that's not a possibility. So then my son-in-law says, "Well, they flies molt the same time every year." Whatever. I said, I looked it up. No, they don't. Flies only live about a month, and then they reproduce constantly, right? So that's impossible on the same day as I'm researching the same topic at the same time. These flies come out from behind my mirror, and but there has been so many things. I mean, now my kids are at my house. My girlfriend's living with me. This is what I was referring to as one of the first times as I started getting heavily involved in the UFO field. And we go to bed. It was, and a lot of times this stuff happened on Thanksgiving. I got divorced in New Jersey. So, I would go see my kids every other weekend for 8 years. I never missed 310-mile round trip from the Pittsburgh area. So I would, bring them out on vacations. I got them for Thanksgiving. My ex got them for Christmas. Almost every Thanksgiving that they were here, there was paranormal activity. So on this Thanksgiving in '04, my girlfriend had just moved in a couple of months before, watched all the football games, ate turkey. We go to bed, and there's somebody, you hear footsteps up and down the hallway upstairs. And I had closed the bedroom door, so I said, the kids are like coming up to the bedroom door. They want to listen in, see if there's any activity, So, so in the morning, my girlfriend would use the bathroom in the hallway and put all her stuff in there. She didn't use my bathroom, the main bathroom. So she goes to work. I get up to brush my teeth. There's 2 arm prints on the mirror, like this. 6 fingers. Hollow in the center, so it was bones. It was like skeletal. I got a mirror and I took a video of it, right? I mean, I got a mirror. I got a picture and I took a video of it. I measured it from elbow to fingertip was 3 inches longer than me. And actually my wingspan is like, I'm 6 foot. That's 72. My wingspan is 74. But that would mean basically that this thing, whatever made the arm prints, was about 7 feet tall. 3, 6, 9, 12 inches. If that's 3 inches more than me. So, I asked my son and daughter, and my son said his jaw dropped. He said, "Dad, we thought that was you walking up and down the hall." And my daughter said she got such a malevolent feeling in her bedroom. She went and slept with her brother. And, years later, I asked my son, I mean, here you are, you're in college, you're 21, you're an athlete, and you sleep with the light on. What's with that? He goes, "I sleep with the light on because at your house, it's haunted." But so then 5 years later, again, I'm the multi-state director now. I wake up at 5 in the morning. There's somebody standing down the hallway. And I'm looking, and I'm wiping my eyes. I'm slapping my face. There's somebody standing there, and he's backlit. And what I do at night in the summer is at the end of the hallway is the door to go up to the attic. I have a gym up there. And I open up the skylights as screens. So, in PA, I don't know how it is in Lancaster, but out here, once the sun goes down, it gets cool. So at 9 o'clock, I open up the skylights. I let the cool air in. So he's standing there at the doorway where the stairs are, and he's backlit, right? It's almost like I know I didn't leave the attic light on. So I crawled to the footboard, so I'm 6 feet closer now on my bed, and I'm looking at him. I say to myself, well, I'm awake. It's been 30 seconds. There's somebody standing there. And I said, you're taking kickboxing? Step over the footboard. I never took my eyes off it. I said, step over the footboard, go down the hallway and hit him as hard as you can, whatever it is. Now, the thing, its head is above the door frame. The door frame's 6'8", so it's 7 feet. And it didn't dawn on me right then, but it did after. The thing that left those arm prints 5 years earlier was 7 feet. This thing was 7 feet. The waist was, I don't know, 12, 14 inches. It had this tiny waist, long arms and legs. And I kind of caught him in, like he didn't expect me to see him. I caught him in this position, like that. And he didn't move, but he had a square head. and I can't see any features because it's backlit. I can only see the silhouette. And so when I said to myself, step off the footboard and go hit the thing, charge it. This is the only time I ever heard voices in my head. It said, "You don't want to do that. That could be unsafe." And I'm working for UPS, so safety first, right? And it said, "You want to step off the bed and turn the light on." I swear to God, that's what it said in my head. It wasn't my voice. It was weird. So I said, okay. So I step off the bed. I turn the light on. He's gone. My cleaning lady was there that morning, so I'm looking down the hallway for footprints. There's none. Now I got a 110-pound Doberman. He's sleeping right there at the top of the stairs. I walk past him, walk back to go to bed. You can't walk past a dog and he don't wake up. It's impossible. So then I start thinking, this is almost like those alien abductions where the wife is being taken and the husband's laying there in bed and she's screaming to him, "Joe, wake up, wake up." And he's sound asleep, you know? So I go to bed, and when these things happen, you can't really sleep. I close my eyes. I don't know, maybe it's 10 seconds. I open my eyes again. There's a light outside, but it's pulling away. And this is like 5:30 in the morning. It's pulling away. And right away I thought, well, that's the woman that delivers the newspapers. But I know what that light looks like. I live in a cul-de-sac. When she comes, she wraps around the cul-de-sac and the light, you can see it. It's moving. This light got dimmer like it was pulling away. So, of course, all my UFO friends and the MUFON guys here in PA said, well, you were abducted and you woke up and you weren't supposed to, and it was leaving. And it had a square head like it was wearing a helmet, you know? So I don't know. But I've had all of this weird stuff, and it's not as much lately as it had been. But from 2014, and that was '09, so it was '04 and '09 what I just told you. But in 2014, June 7th, something showed up in the house, and it was your typical poltergeist. So now I'm saying to myself, well, is this UFO? Is it demonic? What is this? You know? And it lasted from June of 2014 until January of 2019. So it's 4.5 years, right? 2014, yeah, to January 2019, 4.5 years. Every night I go to bed, there's banging sounds, there's scratching sounds, there's movement. My dog's going crazy. I got a 110-pound Doberman, and all of a sudden he'll look up, and well, what happened? I'll tell you exactly what happened on June 6th. I'm watching the baseball game. I've always been a big Detroit Tiger fan, so I remember the Tigers are on. Miguel Cabrera's up, right? I'm watching. My dog was not a friendly dog. He bit me 3 times. You know, I always adopt rescue Dobermans. I've had 6 now, but he was not friendly and he was big. He comes over to me. I'm laying in the lounge chair with my feet out. He lays across my legs. I said, wow, my dog's never done that. He's not friendly. Matter of fact, when I would sit next to him on the stairs, I'd look at him and he would look at you, and they got those crazy eyes. And if you see the lips start going up, he's going to snap at you. You know? So he lays across my legs. I said, wow, that's nice. All of a sudden on the wall, there's a sonic boom. Boom! The picture flips up, and I have 2 Indian headdresses. It's an Indian picture right at the Three Rivers of Pittsburgh with two like Mohawk Indians there. And the Indian headdresses blow to the side, right? So, and the dog and my head both simultaneously turned when the sound and the picture flipped up about an inch, you know, the bottom kind of flipped up and hit. I said, what the heck is that? So I go upstairs, and there's this smell in the hallway, and it's right in front of the bathroom, you know, pretty much. So I said, oh man, did the dog do a dump here in upstairs? So you walk into it and you smell it. You step back, you don't smell it. It's like a column about that wide. And it's right there. And I go into the bathroom, it don't smell. I look in all the bedrooms, it don't smell. But there's one column right there. It stunk. And then I sort of think I put the fan on in the bathroom, hoping to suck the smell out. And I said to myself, that's not really feces. That was my first reaction because your brain's got to explain these things. I said, that's what a rotting animal. That's the smell of death. Like something died right there, you know? So I go back downstairs, I finish the game, go to bed, and at this point, my dog sleeps on that chair right in front of the footboard. It was kind of cool to have your dog sleeping right there. You know, nobody's going to break in, the dog's going to eat him. So I put the weather on. I could see the dog's head. All of a sudden, you see him looking down the hallway, right? And he starts growling and he walks down the hallway. You know, he starts barking, doing this spinning around barking thing. He comes back, lays down, and I turned the TV off. No, the TV was still on. And in the bathroom, it's like a sonic boom. Boom! Both my head and the dog's head turns. So I know I'm not imagining it because the dog is reacting to it exactly at the same moment I react to it. From that point on, for the better part of 4.5 years, I have this activity. I would put blessed coins. I'd go to the church here, get some St. Michael coins, and it would stop for 6 months. I had a priest come in. I finally got the priest to come in from Our Lady of Grace. It took so long, 8, 9 months before they would show up just to bless the house. And while he's doing it, I said to him, well, this seems kind of demonic to me. And I didn't say anything about UFOs to the priest. And I said, are sins of the father true? My father had some issues growing up in New York City. All I'll say is he won a knife fight and spent 2 years in prison. So the priest turns to me and says to me, the devil's not real. That's in the Bible to scare you straight. So right away I said to myself, this ain't going to work. He blesses the house. It works for about 6 months. And then just like the Bible says, it comes back in force, 7 times stronger. I'm having so much activity, and a lot of things happen for a reason because you do have a guardian angel, and I believe that voice in my head was probably the guardian angel, maybe. I don't know, or maybe the alien can communicate telepathy. But I meet this woman on a dating site, and boy, is she beautiful. Dancer, you know, never had any kids. She's in great shape, and we got along pretty good. So I start, you don't talk about this on dates, but I started talking about it, right? So she goes, I had the same type of stuff happen to me. She said at Seton Hall College here, Seton Hill, I think it is here. Seton Hall's in New Jersey. And it was an all-girls school, but it was kind of a religious school. And she's telling me about her stuff. She says, I'll come over your house. I got holy water. I know all the prayers. She went room to room, blessed the house. And again, it was gone for 6 months, but it kept coming back. And it was really a battle, It got to the point and this is 2016, where, I'm telling you, I'd lay in bed and I'd put shows on. I like horror, and that's the other thing. I was a horror fan, Comic-Con, Famous Monsters of Filmland. I wasn't a UFO guy, but I never had any paranormal activity growing up as I collected and did all of that stuff. But now I get in the UFO field and I got all this paranormal activity going on. But it got to the point, I think it was 2017, after almost 2 years of this. This was pretty intense. And it was almost like the Exorcist movie, banging sounds, scratching sounds. I'd be here in my office working. My dog would lay right here. You'd hear nails across the tile floor. You could hear the nails going across the tile floor. And it was kind of cute. You'd see the dog. He'd walk over there. He's looking at the ground, moving his head like this, like he can't see what it is. And one time it happened, then it happened again. So twice the dog went over and looked. Then it happened again. As he turned the corner to look, something frightened him. And he just jumped back and ran into the corner by my desk and kind of hid. And these are Doberman. They don't hide, So whatever that was there around the corner, it showed itself as something, because they're shapeshifters. All of this stuff is shapeshifters. whatever it did scared the dog, you know. But the really the pinnacle of this activity, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the attacks on me, and it poked me in the thigh a couple of times as I walked into the bedroom. One night I laid down, it poked me right here in the forehead, and where it poked me, I thought I got stung. I went in and looked at the bathroom. I said, "Oh man, that's like a wasp sting or something." You know, I looked in the bathroom, and the next day I got a dead piece of dead skin there. It was there for a long time. I had the dermatologist, you know, they spray that stuff on it the way they get rid of moles and everything else, and it went away. But it got to the point where this stuff's all going on, and I've now learned all the prayers, all the other things to do. And you know, I'm commanding it in the name of Jesus. You know, I'm like Father Marin in the Exorcist movie, and I'm commanding it to leave and all of that, and it stops. Right. So I now lay back, and again, you can't sleep. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's 30 seconds, 2 minutes. I open my eyes and I sit up and I said, man, it's pitch black. I was in the total blackness. And I'm looking around. I said, there was moonlight coming in. How the heck is my bedroom total black? It starts up again, more intense, banging, scratching, movement in the ceiling. You could hear cans being crushed like in the ceiling, you know, creaking sounds. I really got scared. I got a chill down my spine. And I said to myself, whatever it is, it's going to attack you. And I felt like it was there to take my soul. I really did. Whatever this was, demon, alien, I don't know what it was. And Whitley Strieber said the same thing. He came to realize it was there to take his soul. So I again started to command it, but I said something. You know, it's funny how your brain, you know, I'm at the point here where this is fight or flight, but they ain't nowhere to go, right? So I said, "You stood." I was really angry. It was funny. I really wasn't scared too much through this whole thing. It would make me angry that it was in my house as an intruder, uninvited, you know. And I said, "You stood in the presence of God and you rejected him. Jesus Christ commands you to leave. You cannot say no. You must obey. Get out." And I'm telling you, the veil of darkness lifted about that speed. It took about 4 seconds. I could see it going up, and all the moonlight came back in. And that was the end of that intensity. And I've written a book on this. It's in two of my books. One is called The Ufologist, which I just updated yesterday because of the activity. It's funny. I published this and I get hardcovers for me and my family. And then a year later, I keep republishing them. I don't know what, I should just wait and not do my final publishing, you know, for my family. So then I got to take the hardcovers and sell them at my conferences, you know. So, I don't know, you know, but this stuff, you know, it keeps going on. But you know, I almost feel, and I've tried to get out of the UFO field. You know, I said I think the answer to this is to get out. And I don't know if you know who Joe Jordan is. He's down in Florida. He wrote a book, Unholy Communion. He was a MUFON country director in South Korea. He's now down in Florida. So him and I became friends. And his book was, he was an atheist. And he got involved in New Age stuff and all of that, but he was basically an atheist doing MUFON investigation. So he's doing a case with this Hispanic woman in Florida, and she says the gray alien comes out of the corner of the bedroom at night, and it's like, I don't know, it's after midnight, and she screams, "Jesus Christ, protect me!" It backs away and leaves. And he says, why would an alien leave if you said Jesus' name? You know, which MUFON lets him go through all the files of entity contact, you know, close encounters, that type of stuff. And he finds 150 cases in the MUFON files of people that called out to God and the alien left. So he writes a book on it, and he's up to over 400 cases now. He becomes a reborn Christian, and same thing happened to me. This thing, I hadn't been to church in 20 years since I got divorced in New Jersey. It's like I just forgot about it. Never said my prayers. It was God and church was 100% out of my head until this happened. When that thing showed up in 2014, I started going back to church. And I've gotten to the point where I am absolutely a reborn Christian. I'm very cognizant of blasphemy. Matter of fact, when Nick Pope said he was dying of cancer, and I've had him out here in Pennsylvania. I was running 3 events in Erie, Pittsburgh, and Bucks County. I've had him out here a dozen times in a dozen years, let's say. And I called him and I said, Nick, what you and Van Daniken, who had just passed away, say, and Giorgio, you're very blasphemous towards God. You're creating a religion, right? And it's not a good religion of the alien. And you said you're terminal, you're going to die soon. If you've said things, you better make them right now, because once you pass over, you don't get a chance to change. You pass over and it's punishment, it's justice, right? You got an opportunity here to fix what you're saying, but you got to believe it. And he thanked me. I didn't know he was an atheist. After he passed away, Giorgio posted that he had many conversations with Nick, and Nick was clearly an atheist, didn't believe in God. So I'm cognizant of that. I run my UFO conferences here. Matter of fact, I took them over from, I retired from Pennsylvania MUFON, but I like running the conferences and I give good lectures, But all my lectures for the last 5 years, I mentioned the blasphemy. I mentioned not to make these aliens your God. I'm very clear with the people, and some people don't like it, and they've come up to me afterwards. But a lot of people have come up to me and said, thank God you brought religion into this. Matter of fact, I had a big schism with MUFON PA. They had asked me to stay on and run their conferences, which I did, and I made them $35,000 clear after these conferences. But I brought Joe Jordan out to speak, and we did a Q&A with the dinner afterwards. These are really good events we did. And we talked, and I was very clear on the religious side of blasphemy that, the UFO alien thing could very well be a trick and a deception, and you better not worship these things, right? So there's a couple of MUFON PA guys, they got in my face, said that was disgraceful. Don't ever bring a religious person in. And I said to him, if you don't understand the religious connection to aliens and UFOs, you don't understand the topic. And then they asked me to leave and said, we'll run the conferences. Well, guess what? It's been 2 years. They haven't run a conference. I was running 3 for them, then 2. It was basically Bucks County and here. So I told them, look, you want to run it, go ahead. I'll help you. I'll help you with the contracts and that type of stuff. But I said, I'm keeping the conference here where I live in Westmoreland. That's mine. So I opened up a LLC called String Theory of the Unexplained. And I had years before written a book, String Theory of the Unexplained. It's the paranormal connection to UFOs. It has my story in there, but I also analyzed a lot of famous UFO abduction cases. And when this stuff was going on, I spent 3 years really reading every book on demonology, exorcism, Father Gabriel Lamorth, Malachi Martin, and I started writing down all the markers of the demonic. I didn't know that Kenneth Ring had done a study back around, I think it was 1990, 92. He did a study comparing alien abduction to near-death experience, and he listed the markers of each, right? So I came across that and I said, oh, cool. I got the markers of demonic. He's got the markers of alien and near death. So I added a third column to his work and listed them. And about 2/3 of the demonic markers that show up are the same as alien. And I said, man, I gave that research to MUFON, to George Medich. Do you know who George Medich is? He pitched for the Pirates and the Yankees. When I was in high school and college in New York, I was living in New York. I watched him on TV pitching for the Yankees, But he became one of my investigators, and he lives out here by the airport, Pittsburgh Airport. And I said to him, Doc, you're a surgeon. That's why they called you Doc Medich. I said, you got to get involved in the abduction side of this because you're a medical professional. And he did. And he now runs the abduction side of MUFON, all of those cases come to him. So I gave him my research, and it's part of his training class to his people. What happened to me, and these markers that match up between paranormal activity and UFO alien activity. So so that was the Joe Jordan story, and that's pretty much where I am. So when I keep writing books, I keep saying I'm not writing any more books, but I write another book. But then I said to myself, I've never really I started going to some Bigfoot conferences and stuff, and I said, I'm not really into Bigfoot, It was always UFOs and, the horror movies. But I said, this is actually kind of cool, Bigfoot. So I had maybe 7, 8 years ago given a presentation called Native American Folklore. And in the Native American stuff that I researched, they got about 20, 25 really cool creatures, and they got their gods of the wind, the rain, the land, the sun, all this. But they got these creatures that show up, right? Bigfoot, Wendigo, shapeshifters, Two-Face. They got about 20, 25 of these things. So then you see this Templar flag behind me. 3 years ago, so I give that presentation. It's kind of a cool presentation. It kind of reminds me of that movie Prey with the Native Americans fighting Predator. So I give the presentation, but 3 years ago, because I'm involved politically and I'm now this real strong Christian, I'm a reborn Christian. I won't tell you the whole story, but I started talking to these Knights Templars in Europe. They invited me over. They knighted me. I'm a Knights Templar in Europe. So, they publish books, and I have their history of the Knights Templars. So I'm thinking to myself, I was thinking about the Prey movie, and I said, how cool would it be? And there's always rumors of Vikings coming over, right? So I said, how cool would it be to write a book? The Templars come over in 1307, when they had that falling out with the Pope and the King. So they come over, they go to Greenland, and Scotland. Well, they go to Scotland, but then they try to go to Greenland and they end up in America, 3 ships. So I got them here in America in 1308, and they're trying to they separate. The one group is making friends with the Native Americans, the Micmacs in like Massachusetts. The other group, they're a little more hostile. They're combating against the Mohican, right? So then there is a group of Templars that were lepers. If you ever saw the movies, they always wear that mask, like that silver-colored mask. And the Templars let them in because Jesus healed lepers. And they had their own sect of Knights Templars, and they were warriors, but they had leprosy. Well, they came in one of those 3 ships. So now they're spreading leprosy to the Mohawk and to the Mohican. And so the Mohicans call upon their gods. Well, they go after and fight them, but they can't beat the Templars. And they call upon their gods to rid the land of these white devils, Well, now every night in my book, a different Native American creature shows up. So they're fighting. One night it's Bigfoot. One night it's Wendigo. One night it's giants. One night it's the little people. One night it's they got this Two-Faced woman who's got razor blades for elbows. One side she's beautiful, the other side she looks like a leper, and she slices you with her elbows and stuff. She could have been a UFC fighter today, but so I wrote this coolest book called Templars versus Indians. I was thinking cowboys and Indians because we don't call them Indians no more, but Templars versus Indians. It's a really cool story. So it's one of the few books I've written that got away from. There's no UFOs in that book. So that's where I am now, and that's a pretty long introduction.
Now, you basically covered a lot of the UFO topic, and just time's sake, we don't want to get too deep into details. I did, like I said, watch a lot of your podcasts and did get into a lot of those details and hear a lot of those stories you mentioned, and they're very interesting. With us, we do our own independent research because we're interested in the topic, and recently, the paranormal aspect has been connecting with us as well. I got into a lot of the Skinwalker Ranch stuff. I've been realizing a lot of paranormal with that. Around the same time, I watched a lot of your podcasts, a lot of your interviews, and the paranormal was connecting with that. More research I've been doing it's been showing that, so it's been sparking my interest a lot more. It's very confusing, and I feel like it's hard to figure out not necessarily what's fact, but what's real. Because I feel like it can be, like you said, it can be like lying in a sense. Like it can be showing it something else than what it really is. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm convinced they're shapeshifters, and all of the stuff that the Native Americans dealt with, and they even say they're shapeshifters. Skinwalker Ranch, they talk about shapeshifters. Even though I don't watch that show, but I'll tell you a quick story. Antonio Paris got permission from Robert Bigelow to go out to Skinwalker Ranch at least 10 years ago. And I said to him, I was friends with him. He lived over in the D.C. area. I think he was a government spy, though. But, I said, I'll pay for my flight to Utah and I want to go with you to Skinwalker Ranch. He never invited me. But he went out there, and of course, then he wrote a blog that it was all nothing going on and that type of stuff. But I was hoping to go out and see it close hand and talk to those guys, because there is something going on there. But, I'm convinced this is shape shifting, and there's, but then again, there is a lot of UFO evidence out there, and I'll tell you about the biggest case I did in 2008 was this UFO wave across Pennsylvania. It started up in Lake Erie with people reporting. Now, remember, I had 7 states, so I saw all the reports. So people were reporting these UFOs out of Lake Erie, triangular craft with 3 lights on them. And then, it's funny. Like I get the reports. I'm getting this report. Then I'm getting a report over by Wheeling, same thing. Then I'm getting reports out of State College, same thing. And then it explodes in Philadelphia and Bucks County. We get over 200 reports in maybe 2 months of people seeing these UFO craft. But I'm convinced they came out of Lake Erie, and they were like, it's almost like they were coming down I-79 and across the turnpike out to Philly, Bucks County, and then I think going out into the ocean, circling back around by Canada, Nova Scotia, and going back to their base in Lake Erie or one of the Great Lakes. But the big thing though is Bucks County was the epicenter of this from I would say it was April, May, June, pretty much April, May, June, where we had these 200 sightings. And it was all kinds of people, every walk of life. I got a report from a police officer. I mean, he fully described what he saw. There were witnesses. There was another police officer he was talking to, and but then he contacted me. The Discovery Channel got involved to do a TV episode, UFOs over Earth. And I wanted him in it. That's credibility to have this officer. And he said he talked to the people in the precinct, and they told him this isn't going to be good for your career. You're not doing this. So he said I can't get involved right now. So he didn't do the show, but I still put his report up and removed the names and that type of thing. And I give a presentation on it too. But there were 2 cases in particular. One in Levittown, where this woman, Denise, the 2 cases I'm going to tell you both occurred around the same time. Denise had 4 or 5 sightings. Cliff had 3. And they were 4 in the morning. They're in the same months. The dog woke both of them up barking, like my dog would go crazy because he sensed something was in the house. Now Denise clearly saw this triangular craft, 3 lights, like a light in the center, but 1 light on each corner, and she'd see it, and dog would bark. This one time she went out into the yard, it zoomed close, and now I'm talking, it's 300-400 feet away, and it's over the apartment complex. These are, I don't know what they were. It wasn't like an apartment house. It was just 2-story, townhouse type. So she says it drops these metallic sprinkles into the tree. She said it looked like Christmas. And I kind of assumed those were probes, right? So, and then it pulls them back up like a magnet, she said. And they got sucked right back up into the craft like a magnet would suck them right back up. So the investigator there, Bob Gardner, he did a really good job. I mean, we went out there and he cut the leaves off that tree. And the Discovery Channel now is involved doing a show, so they paid for the labs and everything. So he took leaves from the tree, leaves from a different tree, leaves from across the street, and sent them to the lab and didn't tell them anything. The leaves that he labeled from her tree came back with high levels of boron on them. Not the other leaves, just hers. And, so somebody said, well, fertilizes, that's boric acid. So I asked the lab, and she goes, if it was boric acid, it would show as boric acid. This was boron. So I looked up, what is boron? Boron's used in paints and enamels in nuclear reactors. Boron's used on stealth fighters. It doesn't reflect radar. So, I mean, and then I come across Fawcett's repetitions, and I think number 8 is high levels of boron in trace evidence cases. So she got something, you know? This was a really good case. And, I mean, there was a lot to it. And the leaves, they had like, it looked like the one, we sent it to 3 labs. The one lab, Dr. Levengood, who's well known, um, he said it looked like there were holes in the leaves, like a laser had burnt a hole. So he said it was not insect chewing the leaves. So that was really interesting. And then the other case, and I want to tell you with that case though, with her, the 3 labs involved 5 technicians. Years later, as I stayed in touch with them, 4 of the technicians died of cancer. Right, only one didn't get cancer out of 5. Now, I mean, maybe they deal with a lot of chemicals, and this happens to lab techs. I don't know, but the other case at the same time was Cliff in Doylestown, and he's again, the dog barks. He wakes up. He looks out his bedroom window. He sees a craft, right? So he sees it, and then I think he saw it again. And then the third time, the dog barks. He gets his wife. She slept in a separate room because he snored. So they go outside. There's a heat lightning storm. And when the lightning goes off, he can see this 6-sided craft. He said the thing was the size of an aircraft carrier, gigantic. And when the lightning went off, he can see between the seams of the 6 sides. And I said, it's probably a mothership. And he goes, could be. But it was triangular, 6 triangular craft docked. And he could, when the lightning went off, he could see it lit it up. And he said the top, it was almost like Close Encounters. It looked like a city on top with poles and lights and different stuff. So Bob Gardner goes to the Philly Tower. They clear him. He goes up. He tells them what he has. And they say, yeah, we had a large object with no transponder that matched up exactly to that time that moved off to the northeast towards New York, Long Island. And that was what the guy had told us. It was moving 25 miles an hour. He didn't know how it didn't fall out of the sky, right? And he said that it then moved off to the northeast. So the funny thing with this, though, is that so they give us the disc, and we go and I send it to Denver, where MUFON's headquarters was, and they pulled the print screens, the paint screens. So we got the screens showing an object with no transponder. We got 6 screens. And I said, okay, now I'm going to file a Freedom of Information Act. But the one thing that came back from the Denver airport, because you can only read this at an airport, you don't have a computer program to read their radar. So it came back and it said that it was copied over. This disc was copied over, like they didn't want us to pull the screens. So I got them and I said to her, what's going on? You copied over and all of that. And I got her email correspondence back and forth. So it was like they didn't think. Her response was, "Wow, I'm surprised you were able to get anything off the disc." That was her answer. We got 6 screens, right? So then I filed a Freedom of Information Act because I want the FAA now to confirm what we got. 4 times they came back saying there's no records to check. And I replied with the procedure and everything, and they said it's beyond the time period. So, so this is what you run into with the government, And then let's see, I'm with Bill Burns, who lived right in that area, and we're doing UFO Hunters. So we do the Denise case, and then we go to do, and Bill took a different angle on it. He got police sketch artists and interviewed the witnesses separately. So that was a good show. And then we're due to do the Cliff one with the radar. And what happened was, and they were only weeks apart, we were going to film for History Channel. I'm driving to Philly to do the Denise episode, and the tower in Philly calls me and says that you're okay to come up and film here in the tower. So I said, well, that's not for like 3 weeks out. And she goes, well, like if you want to do it now, you can come up. I cleared you. And so I called the History Channel. I told them. They called the New York FAA, and then they called me back and they said, I got bad news. The New York FAA said, you're not going up to the tower, and no one's going up to the tower to interview. And I said, man, we missed an opportunity here. I said, why'd you call the FAA? I already got the clearance. We could have gone up and did it, right? So then I was still driving to, Levittown to interview, do the show. And it wasn't a half hour later. I get a call back from the producer, the director, Kevin Barry, and he says, I got more bad news for you. That's that show on the radar. History Channel canceled it. We're not doing it in 3 weeks. I said, you got to be kidding me. We got everything we needed for this. We got clear radar of an object with and it has no transponder. And it's flying over the Jersey Turnpike and I-95 with no transponder on it. More I-95, I would say. They canceled the show. So the FAA called History Channel. This is a few years after 9/11. It's 7 years later. Maybe they didn't want it to come out in the show that we went up to the tower, but we were cleared. I mean, they ran his driver's license, Bob Gardner. I don't know what was behind that, but they canceled the show. But that's what you run into. So there's examples of 2 cases that I think were really good. And in 2008, that year started off with Stevensville, with those cases over Stevensville, Texas, and over President Bush's ranch. But the year ended up after that in Bucks County with these investigations. So, I ended up doing 4 TV shows on this case, mostly Denise. And, the same thing happened. I did the filming in Canada for Close Encounters. And I did 3 episodes. 2 aired, but the episode on Cliff with the radar, it never aired in the U.S. It aired in Canada, but they wouldn't air it in the U.S. So I think it had something to do with 9/11. But, you talk about that, look at now. 9/11, look who's the mayor of New York City, right? And they should bring that episode back and air it now because it doesn't matter, But there's some examples of cases where you had trace evidence. And there weren't a lot of cases where you got trace evidence like that. And we had 2, radar and we had boron. We had radar and boron in this case. So that was 2 good ones, and they're not too far away from you.
Yeah, true. So speaking of you brought up the government a few times, like with roadblocks and trying to block stuff. What made you want to get into the government side of your career?
Well, when I was with UPS, I was in charge of public affairs for Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Virginia. I had 4 departments: security, claims, public affairs, and the crisis management team. So I ran that, and we would meet with 22. I had 22 executives like myself. We'd meet with 22 federal congressmen and senators and, talk about what UPS needed. So when I retired, after 6 months, I needed 6 months to compress after a 35-year career at UPS. But, I said, it was maybe a year or so later. I said, well, let me run for school board. Let me run for county chair of the Republican Party. I ran for commissioner twice, and then governor 3 years ago, and a couple of months ago, I ran for lieutenant governor. I was on the ballot. But the thing with the lieutenant governor is, when I looked at what the lieutenant governor does, they run the Senate. So I was an executive for 26 years. They run any crises that come up goes to the lieutenant governor. I was the crisis management director. And then there was a third thing that they did that matched up also to my work resume. So I said, I match up perfectly with this job. So, and that's what I was putting out there, that I'm qualified. I'm the only one you've ever had that matched all three uh, qualifications of the lieutenant governor. I match it with my resume. But really, I got involved because I ran the public affairs. I wanted to run for office. I wanted to do something that you'd have an impact on laws. I put together such a great plan for Pennsylvania. The main thing was to eliminate the fuel tax, 58 cents. That money was 1.1 billion. It would be about $600 per resident. If you drove, you'd save that on the fuel price. When people say, how are you going to be able to do that? I said, it's 2% of the budget. They've increased spending here in Pennsylvania by 50% in 5-6 years. I can find you 2%. UPS was the tightest ship in the shipping business. I can find 2% when you've increased spending by 50. So, I had such a great plan and resume for the job, but the Republican Party in every race I've run now, 5 times, they have fought me tooth and nail. And the shame is here in Pennsylvania, your Republicans are really the elected people, not the people. The elected officials of the Republican Party, 80% of them are really Democrats. They're not Republicans. And they don't want someone Trump-like me, who grew up in New York City, who doesn't take your crap, is going to get in your face, like Stallone. And I grew up a couple of miles from his family there. You draw first blood, you're going to get a reaction, But I've got the skills, I've got the plan, I've got the creativity. I come up with stuff. I mean, if you were to look at my plan on Vote for Ventre, number 4, voteforventre.com is my plan for Pennsylvania. I've had people say I have 27 points there, and they say I agree with every single one of them you wrote here. But you don't get that from our politicians. It's incredible. So I fight with them, and they were the ones that passed. It was the Republicans. 98% vote passed mail-in ballots, not the Democrats, the Republicans in PA. And I went to meetings with the pro tempore, my state reps around here, and I said, explain to me why you would pass a Democrat initiative. What you passed, you did it, cost Trump the lead in Pennsylvania in 2020. 786,000 votes. He was in the lead at midnight, and 3 days later, he lost the state. And when I was running for governor 3 years ago, the state rep in Lancaster, by you, Zimmerman, do you know him? In Lancaster, Dave Zimmerman. I spoke. He got up next and spoke, and he said, I shouldn't say this, but on the night that Trump lost the election, 3 days after, which should never happen based on our state constitution, it was over at midnight. He said the phone rang. He was in a room with a bunch of Republicans. The phone rang. The word was Trump lost PA. The person said it. They high-fived, cheered, and shook hands. These are the Republicans in Pennsylvania. So they fight me tooth and nail because I would fix this state. Trust me, I would. And, so that's my passion now for politics is kind of fading after they've stopped me 5 times. 5 times it was I didn't lose to a Democrat. I lost to the Republican Party. So we'll see. Everybody's telling me you got to run for county commissioner again next year because I got 75% of the Westmoreland County vote against the endorsed candidate for the GOP here. So they said, how do you not run? You got 75%. You finally got the name recognition you were trying to get. So I'm thinking about it. We'll see. But I'm filming this TV show. It's 24 episodes. And this is kind of grueling. I spent hours on the first episode, and we got 24 to do. So I don't know that I'll have the time, but I don't know if I'll run for county commissioner. But I like the idea. It's funny, my TV stuff has gone in cycles. It was 2008 and 9. It was mainly 2013 that I did a bunch of, 2013 to 15, I did like 31 shows, no, less than that. 24 shows, and then 2019. So it's like a 5, 6 year gap between when somebody calls me to do television. So I haven't done anything since 2019 on TV. And now this one, it's 7 years later. It's a different subject matter, but it's related. It's paranormal. And I'm going to introduce so much stuff into this show. I mean, the director, producer, I filmed last year with them. His jaw actually dropped as I was talking. He goes, I never heard that. I never heard that. I never heard that. I said, man, I am going to make this show so famous and popular, it's going to replace Ancient Aliens, which has run its route. When I did Hangar One, the 2 years, we were told we were going to replace Ancient Aliens because Hangar One was based on MUFON cases, MUFON files. And our viewership was 1.5 million. Ancient Aliens was 1 million. We were on at 10 o'clock on a Friday. They were on at 9. So then the word comes back that they're dropping us, keeping Giorgio with his hair. So I said, why? And they said, well, they get the under 46-year-olds, and that's where you get the advertising money. You're getting the older crowd. I said, but we're on at 10 o'clock. I'm single. You know what happens Friday night at 10? You go out. You don't stay home watching UFO movies, shows, right? I said, put us on at 9, put Ancient Aliens on at 10. We'll draw 2 million to their 1 million. I mean, we were getting more viewers than Hannity and Buchanan and all those shows that were on TV. We had a bigger viewership. They dropped us, But I think this new show I'm working on has the potential to replace Ancient Aliens. I really do. I mean, we can bring all the different genres into this show. And I can't tell you any more about it. Because if I do, then somebody's going to run and create the show before this one hits the market. That's how this dishonest
Right.
industry is.
Yep. Sorry about that. So, do you feel like your research in UFOs, UAPs, has impacted your decision or influenced how people perceive you as a candidate for the lieutenant governor?
Oh, it's interesting. In the beginning, it did. When I announced I was running for county commissioner the first time, what was that? That was 7 years ago. I sent my press release to the Tribune Review right here, and they changed it. I followed what other people's press releases look like. Local Hempfield man running for county commissioner. Well, they changed the headline to local Hempfield man, head of a UFO organization, wants to be county commissioner. It was done to slander me. And then the opening, and even the second time I ran, that wasn't the headline, but the opening paragraph was about my UFO research and being in charge of MUFON for the state. But, it's funny, when I ran for governor 4 years ago, it came up one time in an interview in Punxsutawney, and that was it. And when I sent my press release to the Trib on that, I told the reporter, I said, you tried to make me look silly when I ran for commissioner. And if you got an issue with the UFOs, then go to your congressman. The Pentagon says they're real. The Defense Department says they're real. So you go talk to your congressman. And his response was, yeah, you're right. Funny how quickly that turned around. That was the end. So this whole disclosure thing has at least helped people like me who try to do other things. And, it's given it credibility. Although I'm highly suspicious of the government telling us UFOs are real, after 85 years of saying that they're not real since 1942, the Battle of LA case, which in my mind is more important than Roswell, the 1942 Battle of LA. But all of a sudden, they do a reversal in 2017. But actually, when I was with MUFON, when I did that big case in '08 that I told you about, in '09 was when the Defense Department through Harry Reid got funding, $9 million through Robert Bigelow in Nevada. He was funding MUFON's investigations, and we were told Bigelow was funding it. We knew that, and now we had expense accounts to get reimbursed on mileage and car rentals and hotel stays. They never told us that the government was paying Bigelow. Maybe they didn't know, and Bigelow was fronting it like himself because he was always into the topic, big time. And I met him in Vegas at the MUFON Symposium. We had a couple of drinks and a 20-minute conversation on populating Mars. It was very interesting, but he's all into the UFO stuff. But yeah, I mean, this has added credibility to it, and so that you don't people, I'm sure, will still laugh when they hear it. But officially, you don't like it, go talk to your congressman.
Yeah, I think it became like real. They flipped that switch in like what was it 2017 when the New York Times put out that article.
Yeah, publicly, and
Yeah,
but I tell you what, though, now that they've come out and said that, I'm very suspicious. I liked it better
yeah,
when
me
they
too.
yeah when they denied it. I said this is real. Now that they've come out publicly, and people aren't talking this way, they're just so happy to have confirmation. I said there's a false flag coming, guaranteed. There's a false flag coming. Once they got you believing all of this, which they do, there's congressional hearings, uh, they're going to show. I believe we got anti gravity technology. I believe that 100%. Matter of fact, I think we got it from Project Paperclip in 1945. We got all their notes, the Hanabu, the Digalok. We got everything. And I say 2 years later, the Roswell crash was us testing these experimental UFOs that were anti gravity. That was ours. It wasn't alien. Matter of fact, I said that at a conference, and Nick Pope right away took it and wrote an article on Unseen Universe. It was one of those big blog things, and he's taking credit, and everybody's saying, "Nick, what a great idea!" He never said he got it from John Ventre at the event he was speaking at, my event in the Bucks. But that's how everything is. You come up with a unique idea, they steal it. you know.
Of course,
But yeah,
of course.
I
especially with social
really,
media.
yeah, everything. I've had so many of my ideas taken. I'm an idea person. Even my son laughs. He goes, "Dad, there you go again. You go and give your ideas out for free, and somebody takes it and they go create something. They write a book because you said it." Yeah. I said, well, but you almost have to get attention. If you're going to sell yourself to a show, different things, you got to put your stuff out there so it gets stolen. But I really believe you're going to see a UFO is going to show up. It's ours. They're going to pretend it's from outer space, and there's going to be a message. Now, whether we ever meet those people, you don't have to meet the aliens if the thing has 0 point energy and all of a sudden takes off and does a right turn at a million miles an hour, right? They'll have that and say, look, that's not ours. We don't have that. But I think it is ours. And there's going to be a message there. And it's going to go one of two ways. It's either going to be this message, an atheistic message, about evolution. We went through the religious cycle. It's not true. We evolved. You're doing the same thing. Join the Federation and the one world order, that whole thing. One military or no military,
Hmm.
one world order, one leader for the planet. Your total communist thing or the message is going to be, yeah,
Right.
we were created and we believe in God and maybe the same Jesus. I don't know. I don't know if that same Jesus story applies to the whole universe or just us, or he has to die on every planet, or they never sinned. Who knows? Yeah, I don't know. But it's either going to be very positive, brotherly love type thing, or it's going to be a negative one that I worry about, coming straight out of George Soros and the progressives. But it's funny. I wrote a book in
Mm-hmm.
2013 called An Alternative History of Mankind. And it's based on a true conversation I had in Roswell. I met this girl. I said, I got to go to Roswell, right, to the museum. At that point, I'd been on TV and everything. So I go, and there's this woman there. And, she looked albino to me. So that evening, I'm in the Chinese restaurant down the street from the museum. She walks right in and sits across from me. And she says, I'm a hybrid. I'm half alien. And she had albino looks, the pale, the eyes, the white hair, that type of thing. We had like a 2 hour conversation, and I bought. So we had a 2 hour conversation about the whole hybrid thing, the real history of the planet and stuff. So I'm leaving the next day, and this is absolutely true. I'm driving to go to Santa Fe out of Roswell, and if you know the area, you got 170 miles of desert. There was one stop halfway,
Mm.
which was weird. There's a 1950s diner with girls. They weren't on roller skates, but dressed up in 1950s, and a 1950s diner and everything. But it's in a town where 90% of the businesses were boarded up, and there's this restaurant. It was almost like surreal. And I stopped there to eat when I was coming into Roswell, right? So I'm leaving Roswell, and there she is hitchhiking on the side of the road. Now you're as white as milk, and you're out with no hat, no nothing. It's dead summer, hot as hell there, and you're hitchhiking. You got no purse and no bag. I looked at her, I made eye contact, and something in my gut told me, don't pick her up. Keep going. Don't pick her up. It was
Mm.
almost like the black eyed children, You don't open the door and let them in. I didn't pick her up. It was just weird, and it was that same woman. So then I'm driving, and my mind's working, and I'm very creative. I said, I'm going to take everything she said. I'm going to write a book that I picked her up, and we had this conversation in the car, and not the restaurant that we had. And I write this book, An Alternative History of Mankind, and it's my biggest seller. And I've had people at my conferences here come up to me holding the book saying, this is the Bible. This is the Bible. This is the truth about UFOs and us. And I say, don't say that. It's a story, but it is so cool about this car ride. But the one thing she said when I talked to her in the restaurant, because I brought up this demonic stuff because I was having paranormal, and she said, we have the same issues with Satan and demons and the dark side that you do. We have that in common with humans. We have the same conflicts and the same issues with them. And I thought that was so cool. And I put that in the book because I was having those issues. So
Yeah, that's very interesting. You say that. Well, in that
yeah.
turn, we're gonna wrap it up here. We do appreciate you, John, taking your time to come on the show and talk with us. I feel like we covered a lot. We would love to have you on in the future to get a little bit more into detail about things. Maybe more investigations you've seen. Maybe there's more data. Just to touch on things like we're UFO
Yeah.
guys. We love the research, but we really do appreciate you coming on, taking your time. Describe who you are, your own experiences, your journey with the politics. We really do appreciate it, man.
Before we get out of here, is there anything that people can support you when it comes to your books? Is there like a website we can go to or anything?
Yeah, my website, the simple version is just johnventre.com. The long version is
Okay.
stringtheoryoftheunexplained.com. So type in
Okay.
johnventre.com. It takes you to my website. There's 135 podcasts I've done and lectures there for free. Or what I'd like is you go to Amazon and put my name in, and my books are there. I got 14 books. But that would be the
Okay.
easiest thing to do. Thanks.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Yep.
And I just want to congratulate you on all your success with everything you have going on. And I look forward to talking to you again and your TV show coming out.